Welcome into Hockey Sense. Great to have you with us. As always, Stanley Cup Final edition. I'm Andy Strickland. Welcome into the show. By now, you know the drill, man. This is Hockey Sense. We've been doing Hockey Sense for over 20 years here in St. Louis. Been on the radio for decades, and then now we've brought it to the podcast platform. Although you never know, we could find our way back to radio. I'd love to hear in the comments what you think. Should we go back to radio, or do you like it here at the when we're doing the podcast? Give me your honest feedback. If you don't mind, I'd love to hear from you on that. Big show for you today. EJ Hradek, longtime presence on the NHL Network, was a former scout, I believe, with the Dallas Stars. He's going to have to fill us in terms of his history in the game, but always been a big fan of EJ. He does pretty much everything. He does play-by-play even during the World Junior Championships. He can host. He can be an analyst. What doesn't EJ Hradek do? We'll find out coming up later in the show. Jamal Mayers will also join us. He'll join us live from the Centene Community Ice Center, home of his camp that he's doing this summer with kids of all ages here in St. Louis, along with Joe Vitale, another former NHL player. So the two of them are doing a camp, a 6-week camp. So we are almost through the first week. Today's the last day of the first week, so it's been good so far. Jammer joins us in the penalty box, somewhere that he's very familiar with. As always, Hockey Sense is brought to you by First Community. You know, we love our friends over there at First Community. There's no doubt. They've got the new branch in Sunset Hills. I told you about that. I told you about the home equity loan promo that's going on. It's a great rate. Won't last long. You got to give them a call today. 888-642-7969. They've got this vacation club account that's going on right now. This is interesting. This is new. And I just got back from vacation. Big shout out to Travel House and Apple Vacations. We had a great time at the Secrets in Akumal, close to Tulum in Mexico. Just the wife and I. Great time to get away. You can do the same thing with a vacation club account. Summer's officially right around the corner. Actually, it's here now, right? We are officially in summer. School's out. You got to pay for the vacation and everything. It's just more expensive right now. So listen, this is even more reason to pay attention to what I have to say. There's no reason to stay home. If you want to pay or play now and then pay later, you can look into a vacation loan at First Community or consider the First Community Visa with a rate of just 7.9%. Yeah, that's correct. 7.9% with no annual fee. By the way, the average credit card rate is nearly 28%. So think about that. 7.9 versus 28%. Be careful using your credit card. That's the one thing. I mean, if you're at 28%, don't be using it like crazy. And if you're really thinking ahead, you'll open up a First Community Vacation Club account now. And this time next year, you'll have the money saved up for your vacation. It's the smart way to go. Learn more at firstcommunity.com. And yes, we had a great time. All our friends over there at Travel House, Gail Alshey, everybody, travelhouse.com. They've been in business for over 30 years. Full service travel agency. No matter where you're looking to go, what you're looking to do, check out Travel House. We had an amazing time in Mexico. And now back to reality, man. Took in game one, obviously, the other night of the Stanley Cup Final. We have game two tonight. We have free agency right around the corner. Before that, we have the NHL Draft. Prospect Camp. I always love Prospect Camp. One of my favorite events of the year here in St. Louis is, those 3 or 4 days with Prospect Camp. Always enjoy that. Always a lot of fun. And, getting to know these young kids and the future players in the organization. Thomas Mercick, by the way, is a kid that, if you're a Blues fan, to pay attention to. He hasn't signed yet. And if he signs, he's most likely going to go back to junior for a year or maybe go to college. He's got options to go to college. And I know he's considering those options, but he hasn't signed yet. And I'm a little bit surprised. He's a good player. He's shifty, a little bit on the smaller side. Yeah, he was a 4th-round pick in 2024, just a year ago. So he's hoping to sign. But last year he had 90 points in 65 games with Prince Albert. That included 33 goals and 57 assists, man. Every time I turned around, this guy was putting up points. So anyway, pay attention to that. We'll see what happens. And what the Blues will do come free agency. I would imagine Doug Armstrong's working the phones right now. Listen, I know they want a second-line center, and they also want a right-shot D. And what is the future of Justin Falk here in St. Louis? He's a right-shot D. Do you hang on to him? He's got a couple years left in his contract at 6.5. Do you still see him as a top 4 defenseman? I think those are the conversations that are probably going on internally for the Blues right now in terms of Justin Falk. Is he the guy you want quarterbacking your power play? Can Cam Fowler take that responsibility away from him? Do you need another option to run the power play for the St. Louis Blues, either as a QB1 or a QB2? Because Fowler is certainly capable of being that guy. I think he showed that this past season when he came to St. Louis. By the way, Cam Fowler, this week's guest on the Cam and Strick podcast. Check it out. Great conversation. We had Fowler in studio right here at the Half Coast Studios, and love talking with him. So, he's a guy that's looking to get extended this summer, and he certainly will. Once we get to July 1st, he can sign, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get some news on that very, very quickly after July 1 with Cam Fowler. So, his agent, Paperson's working on that. But Mercick, yeah, we'll see if he gets signed and how quickly he can get signed. The Blues, Uri Prokarsic playing with Moncton. I mean, they won the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League title this year. He had 21 points in 19 games. I mean, he's a guy he's another interesting prospect. I like watching him in the World Juniors, training camp, prospect camp, the whole 9 yards, man. Uri Prokarsic, another third-round pick of the Blues. The Blues have some really interesting prospects. I mean, in addition to Jurasek, you want to see him get healthy. He's a former first-round pick, so a lot riding on his shoulders. You want to see him develop into an NHL player pretty quickly. Colin Ralph is a big kid. Big defense. I think he's transferring this year. But Andre Koss, Adam Jecko, Mercick, I mean, just a lot of interesting names that they drafted just from last year's draft class alone. Jakob Stansel is going to be one of my most intriguing prospects in the organization heading into this year. And, watching him play down in the American Hockey League, how close is he to really pushing for a spot? And I think it's going to be difficult for him to do out of training camp, but he's got some legit game. He really does. We saw that in the World Juniors too. And this guy can play. So, didn't have the best numbers in the American Hockey League, so that was obviously an adjustment for him. He had 57 points in 58 games in the Western Hockey League. He's not a guy that's going to come in and be a top 6 forward and be an offensive guy, but I think he can be a depth player who can provide some offense. He was just so good in the World Juniors, it got you excited about him. Maybe the best kept secret in the Blues organization. I would like to see him get a goal or two in the American Hockey League. He had no goals there in 10 games, but 10 points in 7 games in the World Juniors last year, playing for his native Czechia. We had Jakub Dobis on with us last week. Speaking of Czechia, check out that interview. So anyway, some interesting prospects. Blues looking for a second-line center. In terms of free agents, I don't know. Would you go after a John Tavares? Is that something that you would do? I mean, he's 34 years old on July 1st. You look at Brock Nelson getting $7.5 for 3 years from Colorado. What does that mean for a contract with John Tavares? I mean, the idea that you're going to get this guy at $4.5 or $5 million, not happening. Not after Nelson just gets $7.5 and Tavares. I mean, even though they don't put up numbers or they don't win in the playoffs there in Toronto. I mean, this guy's still been about a point per game guy. He has 74 points in 75 games this season, 65 a year ago, 80 points 2 years ago. You don't want to go more than 3 years with him, but I'm sure that's the magic number that he'll be looking for. And who knows, he may even, end up landing back in Toronto. Maybe they find a way to get it done. And I'm not saying he'd come to St. Louis either, but the Blues are not far away. They really aren't. I think they showed that last year. I think this year they really compete for a top 3 spot in the division. There certainly should be a playoff team. There's no reason why they wouldn't make the playoffs. Robert Thomas took such a big step last year, and now you want to see him take even a bigger step this season. And just to get an idea of how high can his production go? Can he flirt with 100 points? Can Robert Thomas truly flirt with 100 points? I mean, in order to do that, and players who typically put up 100 points play on elite, top-end power plays. Usually their power plays are somewhere hovering around the top 5, 6 in the league. Can the Blues have a top power play? I don't know. But that's how you get to 100 points when all of a sudden you walk away with 40-plus points on the power play. So, and 50 points on the power, whatever it is. I got to look and see what the top players in the league had on the power play this past season. I always look at that, at least when we get to 40 games into the year, 30 games into the year, and you look at the league leaders and then you see how many points they have on the power play. And they get a lot of their candy on the power play. So Tavares is a guy maybe pay attention to. He's a little bit up there in age, though, at 34 years old. I don't know if that would make sense for the Blues. But another guy who's just a year younger, who I think does make sense, and there will be interest in, is Michael Granlund. The Blues have had interest in him in the past. He's a guy that could step in on a short-term situation. I don't think you go more than 2 years with Granlund. At 33, wouldn't do it for more than 2 seasons. His agent may not like me saying that. He may not like me saying that. He's got to be careful with these guys. You look at 33-year-olds. I mean, that's the age of Braden Shen right now. He's got 3 years left. You can't have a bunch of centers that are in their mid-30s. But the Blues have had interest in Granlund before. And, his ability to skate and, to get around the ice, and you watch him in the Stanley Cup playoffs playing with a good team in Dallas. He had some really, really good moments in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Dallas is trying to re-sign Granlund, too. But in terms of centers in free agency, obviously the big dog is Sam Bennett. We'll see where that goes. He would be the guy. I think you'd be willing to go $7 million, whatever, 7.5 to get a guy like Sam Bennett. I just don't know if that's going to be enough. I mean, if he's going to sign for 7.5 or 8, then this guy is just going to stay in Florida. It's not like Florida's going to offer him 6. They're going to negotiate in good faith, and they're going to give him somewhere around 7.5. Maybe he can get north of 8. Maybe he can get close to 9 from Florida. I don't know what he's going to get. This idea that Sam Bennett's going to get $10 million, though, I've said it over and over. So if you listen to Hockey Sense and Camistrick, you may get sick of hearing me say it. But, I mean, you want to give this guy $10 million a year. Just be careful with that. Because he's not going to be able to live up to it from a production standpoint. Now, if he goes to a team and they win Stanley Cups, then he does live up to it. But sometimes you sign a player like him who's in a great spot. He's slotted perfectly. He's got the perfect players surrounding him where he can just go out and do his thing. He doesn't have to be the guy. You sign a $10 million a year contract in free agent, guess what? You're expected to be the guy. It's a completely different situation. And too often you see those types of deals that are signed in the summer just end up becoming disasters 2 or 3 years down the road where you're looking to move on from the contract. So you just want to be careful there, and I'm a big Sam Bennett fan, man. I love watching this guy play. He's physical. He scores. He pretty much does everything. His body language and facial expressions never change, ever. And you can talk about him falling into Stuart Skinner the other day, whether it was on purpose or not. I mean, chances are it probably was. This guy is so intelligent as a player. And you may not look at that play and say that was an intelligent play, but yes, it was. That was such an intelligent play to have the body control to be able to know where you are on the ice, know you're falling backwards, but to be able to take another step and make it look like it's completely accidental that you fall right into the goalie. It's like when he punched Brad Marchand in the face last year in the playoffs. Remember that? That was accidentally on purpose. But his facial expressions, they never change. Ever. I love players like that. Great game the other night in Game 1. I'll talk to Jamal Mayers about that as well as EJ. just my take. I just thought Edmonton was the more aggressive, more physical team. How often do we see that when the Florida Panthers are playing, that the Oilers or the opposition is the more physical team? And this is where you look at the Oilers and you say, hey, they're built a little bit differently. And I know a lot of people out there are saying, hey, Stan Bowman doesn't deserve the credit because he inherited a great team. Yeah, you inherit Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Zach Hyman, who's hurt right now, and Nurse and Bouchard and all these guys. I get it. But you know what? He went out and signed some guys. He inherited Kane too, but he brought in Frederick. They brought in Skinner, Arvidsson. I mean, he made some changes. They're a different team, is my point, than they were a year ago. So he has put his stamp on the team. But everything goes through McDavid and Draisaitl. Just an incredible play in overtime. Those two guys, man. You just knew or know eventually they're going to win a Stanley Cup, and it looks like this could be the year. Now, I've said several times now, game one was way more important for Edmonton versus Florida. Florida would have loved to win the game, especially when you have a 3-1 lead in the game. You hate to see that evaporate and then lose after holding a 2-goal lead midway through the game. You just don't want to see that. But I'll give Edmonton all the credit in the world. I really will, man. They are a unbelievable hockey team. As long as they get goaltending, then I don't see them losing the series if they're going to get goaltending. It's just too many things are going their way right now. And in terms of Florida, they just, as good as they are and as physical as they are and as intimidating as they are and as experienced as they are, they're going to have a chance. They're going to need Bobrovsky to be better in game two and certainly moving forward than he was in game one. But they've just got players that are not healthy. I don't know where Reinhart is at. Matthew Tkachuk certainly is not healthy. I would say he's probably 50 to 60%. I mean, when you're hurt entering the playoffs, you're just not entering the playoffs 100%. Typically, you're pushing it so you can play in the playoffs. He still played over 22 minutes the other night, but this guy's not even close to 100%. He's not 75%. But what's amazing is that Matthew Tkachuk is probably closer to 50% than he is to 75%. And I think he still has, like 16 or 17 points in 18 games or something like that. So he's almost a point per game player, even though he hasn't been healthy. But this is a huge game, too, for obvious reasons. And I think it was way more important, like I said, for Edmonton to win game one. I think Florida has the experience and the stronger ability to kind of shake it off and turn the page and then get focused on game two. Versus Edmonton, if they were to have lost game one, the tone and the temperature and the reaction from the fans and the media up there would be completely different and almost a sense of panic. So you're not going to see that, obviously, from Edmonton after winning game one. So that was a huge win for them. We'll see what happens coming up tonight in game two. We'll get into that with EJ Hradek coming up next. Jamal Mayer's later on in the show. So a lot of good stuff happening in terms of what we have going on with those two guys. The NHL draft, by the way, decentralized. So every team's going to be in their local market. I hear it's going to shift back to the Sphere next season. Teams aren't crazy about doing this. I think the idea was, hey, this is the best way to do it. And we'll see what the reaction is from individual teams. Once we get through the NHL draft, the Blues are going to have a draft party. You'll hear more information about that, where the fans can get involved. So they'll find a way to make the most of it when, even though the draft or the management and the scouting staff isn't going to be in LA, they'll be in St. Louis. They'll still find a way to make an announcement, make it fun for the fans, and turn it into an event. I would imagine a lot of teams are doing that, but the Blues are certainly doing that. You'll hear more information about that soon. There's some other stuff happening, too, that we'll get into. Chris Zimmerman's going to join us in a couple of weeks. He wants to dive into a few things, so we'll hear what Z has to say about that. But Bennett would be your number one center that you would prioritize if available, if you're a team like the Blues. But there's certainly going to be a number of teams that are interested in him. Marner's not going back to Toronto. If you don't have him signed by now, obviously that's not happening. So he's going to leave them high and dry, man. Imagine having a player of his caliber and he walks for nothing. And you basically have accomplished very little as an organization. I know you've gotten to the playoffs a number of years in a row. You got out of the first round a couple of times, never out of the second round. You won the division. And if you want to look at that as a success for a team that has as many high-profile superstars as they do, then I guess you can. But to me, it's not a success. And now they lose him for nothing. He held the cards, though, I guess, with the no trade. He turned down some deals. So I'm not going to sit there and blame Brad Treliving. He tried to move him, but much easier said than done in terms of getting that done. It's not easy. But I will say this year, free agency is going to be exciting. It just reminds me back when, like, Brad Richards was a free agent and all the media is hanging out outside of Newport Sports, and you got live cameras and live footage, and they all want to know where he's going to sign. And if you remember a guy like Richards, and it was a big story at the time, I know you're going to sit here and say, well, he's not Mitch Marner, but he was a big-time name in free agency. And he didn't end up signing until like the third or fourth day of free agency. So it lasted a couple of days. I just hope these guys sign on July 1st and move on and get it over with. But I'll see what else St. Louis is looking to do. Doug Armstrong. Some people throwing out offer sheets, maybe that Joel Hofer could be the target of an offer sheet if there's a team looking for goaltending. I guess that's always possible. You can look at RFAs on every roster and say they could be a target for an offer sheet. I think the Blues are prepared for that, though. And they don't want to lose him. He's a big part of the future. He's the future number one goaltender here in St. Louis. At least they hope so. Colton Ellis is another guy who has gotten the attention of the Blues, not just this past year. He's had their attention for a handful of years now. And eventually they're going to have to get him to the NHL. He's ready. He's not too far off from getting up here and playing. So I guess if a team wanted to just go crazy on Joel Hofer, I guess you could. But let's hope that doesn't happen. I don't know if we're going to see any type of real retaliation. I just don't think you're going to see that. But when I say the Blues are looking for a right shot D, Aaron Ekblad would be your number one target. And I think there's a legit possibility that the Blues would certainly chase him if he's available in free agency. It doesn't mean they're going to get him. I mean, a player like him is going to attract interest from several teams. He wants to stay in Florida. I think he's got a better chance, or Florida has a better chance of getting Ekblad back on a hometown discount than Sam Bennett. I think Ekblad has even indicated that he would take a little bit of a hometown discount to come back. He doesn't want to leave there. And I don't think Bennett wants to leave either, but I also think he's looking to take advantage of the situation and hit a home run financially. Can't blame him for that. But the Blues would have some interest in Ekblad, I think for sure. I mentioned the power play early on in the show. He's a right shot D. He's a guy that you could plug in there, certainly in your top four, and be very, very comfortable with him playing at the top, along with Colton Parayko on your right side. So you pay attention to those guys. The problem is, if you're the Blues, I mean, nobody's looking to cut deals with Doug Armstrong and the Blues right now after he fleeced Edmonton last year. I feel like Army's fleeced a number of teams. And when I say fleeced, it's not like he's taking advantage of teams, but you know what? He negotiates a deal, the other team agrees to it, and it works out in the Blues' favor. So, yeah, everybody's looking for top four right shot D. Everyone's looking for help up the middle in your top six. We'll see if they revisit the Braden Shen trade situation. Of course, he turned down the deal in back at the trade deadline. I think the thought process from his camp was that this would be revisited in the summer, and the Blues would approach him again with a trade proposal in the summer. So we'll see if that happens. I don't know for sure if it will or not. I know Jim Montgomery's a big fan of Braden Shen. He likes to have players like that in your lineup. I don't mind Shen at all, especially as a number 3 center. I thought he had a really good year, man, and just really stepped up from a leadership standpoint. I thought he grew as a captain. Just the way his teammates talk about him, there's something to be said for that. He's a great guy to have inside the dressing room. So I don't think he wants to leave. We'll see how that goes. I mean, the summer, it's a long ways away. It doesn't have to happen in June, doesn't have to happen early in July when free agency kicks off. These types of deals can happen in late July, they can happen in August, they can happen in early September. You just never know. But Hradek Foxa, I don't know where that's going to go. I would love to have Foxa back as well. I don't know if you can come back, though, with Foxa, Sundqvist, and Shen up the middle behind Robert Thomas. I just don't think you can do that. You got to get quicker. You got to get a little more scoring up the middle. And I don't think you get that with Sundqvist and Foxa. Sundqvist has one more year. You could push him down and have him be your fourth line center. But Foxa did a hell of a job this past year. I would love to have Foxa back. But you would probably need to move on from Sundqvist if you're going to make that call. So again, some things that are in play. We'll see how it plays out. But again, you look at free agency, not the biggest names out there, but the Blues will do something. I would imagine they're going to look to improve the team and build off of what they did this past season. EJ Hradek coming up next. Looking forward to that. I mentioned First Community. They bring us Hockey Sense each and every week live from Half Coast Studios. Love our friends over here at Half Coast Studios. Check out all their other great podcasts that they put out each and every week from this beautiful studio, including the Cam and Strick podcast. Check that out. We had Cam Fowler, like I mentioned, in studio. Great conversation with him. You can find that on all of your podcast platforms. Anywhere you get your podcasts, you can find that. Dirt Cheap Fun Fun, your one-stop party shop. Download the app today and find out all the great things that Dirt Cheap provides and can offer you. The Wallace family just flat out getting it done. The Wallace family taking St. Louis to the next level, one dirt cheap at a time. Don't sleep on their party supplies. They've got so much going on inside each of their stores, including the party supplies. So if you have graduation parties, back-to-school parties, 4th of July parties coming up, any type of summer cookouts, get all your paper goods and everything you need from Dirt Cheap. You can find it all on the app. A lot of the locations have drive-thrus, which people don't even know. So you can go do all your shopping on the app. Never get out of your car. They've got curbside pickup. They've got a lot of options for you. So check that out on their app and find the Dirt Cheap location nearest you. And their incredible beer cooler, the walk-in beer cooler. They've got a great selection of beer, wine, and booze. Best selection of beer, wine, and booze that you'll find anywhere. Dirt Cheap Fun Fun. Cheap, cheap, fun, fun. Your one-stop party shop. Blue Note Roofing. David Novak, man. How busy is this guy right now? I'm trying to get him in the studio. David, we want you in studio. 314-920-5713. Where you at, David? Probably on a roof somewhere or helping somebody. This guy has been so busy. 314-920-5713. The storms in this town have been devastating in some circumstances, annoying in other circumstances. I mean, it's just been a lot of rain, man. I just never experienced this much rain. Even walking into the studio this morning, it's raining. It just rains every day. It's not like a Seattle or a Portland, Oregon rain either, where it's kind of a mist. It's a full-on downpour, like thunderstorms, every single day. My son's supposed to have baseball tonight, man. You know how many games he's played this time? Not many. They all get rained out. Practices get rained out. Games get rained out. Can hardly play. Call David Novak, though, if you are in need of a new roof or you want that free estimate. If you have any storm damage, they take all your big-time insurance companies' insurance, so they've got you covered from that standpoint. Check it out, 314-920-5713. Gutters, soffit, fascia, siding, roofing, whatever it is you're looking for. Look for the big yellow truck with the blue notes on the side. David Novak, the best in the business. Lordo's Diamonds, get that special someone, something special in your life with Lordo's Diamonds. Mike and Jimmy, they are the absolute best. Nobody does it better than Mike and Jimmy Lordo. Are you kidding me? They've been around for 70 years, and there's a reason for it. Best customer service. You walk in there with a $100,000 budget or a $250 budget, they're going to treat you exactly the same because that's who they are. best selection of engagement rings. If you're looking to pop that question, if you're looking for a piece of jewelry to give your most recent graduate or somebody that's going off to school, maybe they're turning 16, 18, maybe it's a monumental birthday, somebody's turning 50, and you want to get your wife or even your husband, whoever it is, a piece of jewelry to commemorate the 50th birthday or whatever birthday it is, you walk right into Lordo's Diamonds, 314-432-8008. Give them a call. You don't have to. You can just walk on in. Right next to Truffles in the heart of Ladue off of Clayton. You know where Truffles is. LordosDiamonds.com. Say hi to Mike and Jimmy. Tell them Andy Strickland sent you from Hockey Sense. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. EJ Hradek, NHL Network. He's up in Edmonton right now. He's getting up early for us. You know, we appreciate that. I'm looking forward to this conversation with EJ. It's coming up next. I'm Andy Strickland. Thanks for hanging out on a Friday. It's our Friday tradition. Thanks for watching Hockey Sense. Well, I appreciate you doing this, EJ, man. I wanted to get you on. So you mentioned the NHL International broadcast, 6th season with Kevin Weeks. And you're still doing all the NHL Network shows right now during the final as well, right? So, I mean, how busy is your schedule today?
Well, it's busy, but I do it early. I do the early show, right? I do the NHL Tonight first shift, which is the first show that's usually on our programming day. So I do that. I get a little bit of a break in between, and then I go and call the game with Kevin. And calling the games, I've been doing them now. I did the World Juniors this year for Team USA. I've done a number of different games that we do during the season. I really enjoy it. I got to go to Czechia and to Finland this year for a couple of the Global Series games. I got to call those. So I really enjoy it. I've been doing I've been in this business a long time. I've done a lot of different things, and I think of all of them, I enjoy calling the games the most.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, because you're so locked into the games when you're doing the play-by-play. But, I would say before you came on, like, you pretty much have done, you've done a lot of different things. I mean, you do host shows, you're an analyst. Like, let people know your background, long before you got to the NHL Network, because it wasn't that long ago where the NHL Network wasn't even on the air here in the States.
That's right.
It certainly wasn't there when I was a kid growing up. I can only imagine what it was like. I mean, my son, like, he does, I don't think he's eaten breakfast without watching highlights from the night before for, at least the last couple of years. He's 9 years old now. Don't imagine if they had that when I was a kid. But what were you doing all these years? How'd you get into hockey? Give us an idea of your background.
Well, it's kind of a crazy story. I mean, I grew up in suburban New York in Westchester County, and single parent, 2 other brothers, sports loving kid. Always out playing stickball, street hockey, touch football, whatever it was. It's a little bit of different era than we have today. Today is, as you know, with a 9-year-old, and I've got 3 kids now that are kind of matriculated through that age group. Everything is almost appointment, playing. It's not like you just go out and play like you used to, but just love sports. Knew I always wanted to be in sports. Had a real passion for hockey. I always wanted to play as a kid. We didn't have the resources for that to happen until I got old enough to kind of piece things together. But I started playing hockey when I was about 15, and got into, when I went to school, knew I wanted to be in sports, had an aptitude for journalism and for writing, so got into that. And the business has changed so much, Andy, over the years, right? So like when I first started, I was doing like newspaper, work where I was covering high school games, things like that. I worked for a place called Sports Ticker, which used to deliver the scores on, like, in bars. If you were at a bar, you'd see the score flash across. Now, of course, it's right on your phone, so it doesn't matter. But I did all those different things. Ended up getting a job in Dallas for Beckett Publications, which was a sports card company, basically a sports card collectible magazine. And I had the good fortune, the timing was right. The Dallas Stars arrived right in that window, and I got to create relationships with, everyone from Bob Gainey to Les Jackson to Craig Button to Doug Armstrong, right on down. Got to know the players pretty well. I somehow, Andy, talked them into letting me scout for them for a couple of years when I moved back to New York, and I had a great time doing that for 2 or 3 years. Really learned a lot about the game from people who had been watching it and played it for a long time. And then I got a chance to go to ESPN Magazine as they were opening. And so it was a really good opportunity. And I did 13 years there. And now I've had 14 years at the NHL Network. So it's been a kind of a crazy ride. And, it's one of those paths. It's not a straight line, that's for sure.
No.
But it's been fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I was right because I was going off in my head. I think he was a scout with the Dallas Stars, and I
Yeah.
said we're going to have to
Yeah.
ask him to find out. So I was right about that. And that would have been when? Like, what years would that have?
That was the late 90s, right before they won their Stanley Cup. And I always say I was mostly an apprentice. Like, I went to Les Jackson, and Les was one of the assistant managers there in Dallas at the time. And, it's funny because he left Dallas right before they won the Stanley Cup. He went to Atlanta to be an assistant GM there, and he missed the Stanley Cup. He didn't get his name on the cup. And he was such a great guy, and he gave me an opportunity. And then 25 years later, he was working with Florida as as an advisor, and he won the cup. So finally, there was some justice in the world that he got his name on that Stanley Cup. But he gave me the opportunity. I was going back to New York. It was a different era, Andy, too. Like, the games weren't as readily accessible in the mid 90s as they are today. And they had made a couple of trades, and there were for some players, and I was like, boy, some of those trades didn't really make sense to me. And I said, listen, I'm going back up to the New York area. I will be, I can go, there's so many different possibilities. You go Rangers, Devils, Islanders, Flyers, Capitals, Bruins. There's all kinds of AHL teams in the Northeast. And I said, I would love to do it. I said, why don't we just, I'll do it. You pay my expenses. If you guys think I'm helping you, you keep me on. If I like it, I stay on. If I don't like it, I just, no harm, no foul. And he was okay with that, and I was okay with it. And I did about the first 2 months, and he sent me a note, and he said, hey, you're doing a great job. And I was really excited to get that. And, I went to, like I said, I must have been to over 100 games for those couple of years, minor league games, NHL games. And, just looking at players, I would pick players that, I would pick players that I thought were players that I thought the Dallas Stars might have an interest in, free agents, that type of team, and just do reports on 12, 13 guys in each game. And, I was very lucky just because I got a chance to sit next to some of these scouts who had a world of experience and learned a lot. Some of them were very, very welcoming because I was kind of a nobody, Andy. I mean, I just come in there. I'm not somebody's brother. I'm not a former player.
Yeah.
I can remember Ace Bailey to this day, sadly passed away in 9/11. Just a wonderful, wonderful man, and just very, very welcoming. And there were several others, and Peter Mahovlich and many others. So it was a great opportunity. So I did it a couple of years, and then I got the chance to go to ESPN magazine when they were launching, and it was just too good an opportunity to pass up. And once I was at ESPN magazine covering the league, that on that national level, I felt it was too much of a conflict to continue to do the scouting work.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you know it now because especially being at NHL Network, but look at all the national networks and all the platforms and all the other sports. I mean, it's like they've gone away from journalists almost, and it's all of the former players. I mean, it's former players everywhere, right? I mean, basketball, football, and even with hockey now. So to be able to provide analysis without having played in the NHL, I think it's great that you're able to do that and be an analyst. But you got to have that versatility too. I tell the young kids all the time, right? You got to be able to produce, you got to be able to edit, you got to be able to do. The more things you can do, the more opportunity you're going to have.
Yep, that's great advice. I always say, the basics to me, or the core thing for me, is if you can write, you have a chance, because you can write a script, you can write a segment, that is one of those things that's kind of becoming a lost art in some ways. So, that's one thing. But in this era where we all have these little toys that we carry around with us all the time and have every bit of information in our lives there, I mean, they do so many things. And, if kids want to get into the sports business, and they want to get into this field, and it's so different now, but you can use that phone to really create your own career.
Yeah.
It is kind of amazing, right? We've seen it, Andy, with different people. So, it's a different world for sure. And, but I think, if you have a passion like I did, and you just are bound and determined to get to a place, you have more options, I think, now in a lot of ways than you did, when I was kind of trying to make my way through the 80s.
Yep. Just all you need is a phone and a YouTube account now. You're just
Yeah, yeah,
you're in good shape. NHL Network, I mean, that's really just, taking it to the next level year by year. I feel like there's more and more money being put into it. I could be wrong. I mean, I don't work there, so but
yeah.
just in terms of I just feel like there's more options, I think, for the viewer now more than ever. There's a variety of different shows, different personalities that are on there. So are you happy with the way that network has grown, and what's the next level for the NHL Network, you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's always room for more. I mean, our programming day starts at 4 p.m. During the season, so it'd be great if we were, if we were in a situation where we would come up earlier in the day. But everything is about budgets, and that's the way it is. But I think, when I pursued going to the NHL Network, Andy, it was, at that time, and as you mentioned it, right? It wasn't on in the U.S. It was on in Canada, and I just was kind of like, boy, we need this in the United States because, if you are, if you're in a market, you're in St. Louis, you're watching the Blues games, you get the games, but like there's not a lot of coverage outside of that of, even the Blues. Like if the Cardinals are playing, they're a big story. The Rams were there for a while. I mean, other things, people are talking about. So there's not that day-to-day coverage all the time. And in some markets, there's almost none. I mean, like, I grew up in the New York area, and the world changed so dramatically with the advent of sports radio and sports talk, and the hosts really lean on their strengths. So in New York, in the mid 80s into the 90s, when that was becoming a thing, I mean, it was baseball talk around the clock, football talk. You didn't get much hockey. So for me, I thought it was kind of a natural thing for the NHL Network to be on in the States. Eventually, it was. I was doing a midday radio show for the NHL Network radio that I was involved with, and then they did a simulcast of that. And so that's kind of how I got started, working there while I was at ESPN. And then eventually, I got the opportunity to go full time at NHL Network. But, it's grown a bit. There's been some changes over the years. Our show was in New York out of the NHL store, a little like a little loft studio that was meant for radio. That the best thing about it was that the camera shot right through the NHL store and the glass windows. You're right in Midtown Manhattan, so it was kind of a cool look. And we've moved to Secaucus, New Jersey, where MLB Network is. We shared studios with them, and we've been there for the last 11, 12 years. So I think that's been a really good relationship. And, hopefully we can continue on. I mean, this environment, Andy, as you know, it's changing. NFL Network was a lot of their properties have been sold, I think, to ESPN, and the world is always kind of changing. But I think content is still, content is still king, and it's still being used in different forms. So we'll see where it goes moving forward. But it's been really a great ride for me. And, with ESPN at that time, not having the NHL, it was great for me to get somewhere where there was a real focus on hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, listen, there's a lot of hours throughout the day, man. You'd love to see maybe some additional programming. We'll see where that goes. Maybe a
Yeah.
morning show. Tell them Cam and I will come do a morning show for the NHL.
Hey, listen, they've been talking about that for years. It makes sense. I mean, what do we have? The morning skate and hockey every day. It's already named. I mean, it's pretty easy to do, but yeah, I mean, listen, send them the tapes. I mean, but it's all, what it is, Andy. You've been around long enough. It's all about money and making it work. And
Yeah, of course.
but it's a great idea, and I would love to see it happen.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What do you make out of this series, man? It's interesting because I look at it and I say that was a bigger game in game one for Edmonton versus Florida. I mean, Florida would have loved to win the game, but I think maybe they'll have an easier time to turn the page and prepare themselves to now regroup for game two versus Edmonton. If they would have lost in game
Yeah.
one, maybe that would have been a little bit different because of all the chatter they would hear and the fact that they didn't win a year ago. What impressed you the most about the Oilers in game one?
Well, I would say their stick-to-itiveness, as they have done all year, right? Like even going back to last year, it seems like when they get behind in games, it doesn't really matter. They were down 2 goals to a team that doesn't really squander leads in the second period. Arvidsson scores a quick goal. Really, it wasn't a great goal on Bobrovsky. It made it 3-2. And then the tendency, I think, to playing the Oilers, at least it seems, I go back to that King series and I watch some of the other series, is just I think that teams get kind of frightened to push offensively against Edmonton, and they just want to try to run the clock out on them. And I would just say that's a terrible strategy because you can't run the clock out on the Oilers. They can always find ways. So the best thing to do is just keep playing the way you're playing and really push them and really be aggressive and force them to defend and force them to be deep in their own end. We saw LA had their disastrous results with trying to milk games in the third period when they had leads. And, I think Florida really never pushed. I think they got 2 shots or something in the third period of game number 1. So, they allowed for Edmonton to push. They found their way to tie the game. That's what those guys do. I mean, with McDavid and Draisaitl and Bouchard on the blue line, I mean, these guys are going to be able to score. And that's, watching them, Andy, as they've moved through the playoffs, I've just been more and more impressed. And the arrow is pointing to them right now for me, just because Draisaitl is healthy. I mean, he was not healthy last year in the final. I mean, I don't think he had a goal in the 7 games last year. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but he didn't have a lot. He had 2 goals in game 1. He was a factor. They have Evander Kane is healthy and playing and being a factor in these games. That's a difference. Now they're missing Zach Hyman, but their depth is much deeper. And, Kasperi Kapanen came over from St. Louis on waivers. I mean, I'm sure you got to see him. He didn't really make it in Pittsburgh. I thought he should have probably just been a waiver guy there. I think St. Louis traded for him, and then he ended up on waivers going to Edmonton. But he looks like a completely different person. He is buzzing around and physical, and, they're getting those contributions all throughout their lineup. I mean, Vasily Podkolzin, another former first-round pick. They added Jake Wallman, who, inexplicably, the Red Wings traded with a second-round pick to San Jose, and then San Jose is able to trade him to Edmonton, and they get a first-round or conditional first-round pick back. But Jake Wallman he's not like a physical guy in terms of he's not going to be banging into everybody, but boy, oh boy, he is a big, strong guy and just another guy not hard to knock off the puck. Klingberg has come in and is healthy and playing well. So, I mean, just all these things are pointing towards the Oilers, were on the other side for the Florida Panthers. Matthew Tkachuk is clearly compromised.
Yeah.
So that's a negative for them. And, they've played a lot of games the last couple of years, and their depth is not quite as good as it was, last year. So, I mean, these are the challenges. We'll see if Florida could turn it around. They're a great, great team, as we know. But right now, it seems like the Oilers are really rolling on all cylinders, as they say.
Yeah, no, they've got the confidence too, and just they just have that swagger. There's something different about the Oilers, I would agree.
Yeah.
Their physicality too. I mean, they kind of punch Florida in the mouth a little bit too, which Florida's not used to experiencing that. It's usually the other way around. But listen, a lot of hockey to be played. We'll see how it plays out. Bobrovsky's going to have to be better. You just wonder if Skinner can continue to play at the level that he's been at. There's so many question marks, but I agree with you with Evander Kane. I think he had 9 hits.
Yeah.
Game 1, bringing Frederick over, who, he
another guy.
Yep. He's probably not 100% either when you had the high ankle sprain, but still the physicality that he can play with.
Yep.
I think it's different when it's Evander Kane and Trent Frederick, those type of physical players who are legitimately tough and, imposing players and intimidating players. When they're coming at you, I think it's a little bit different to deal with.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And, throw in Podkolzin is a big kid, too, and he gets in on the forecheck. Janmark is a meaty guy, and, they just got a lot more beef in their group. And the other night, if you look through their ice time for their forwards, I think Podkolzin might have played the least of the 12 forwards, and he was at 1340, somewhere in there.
Frederick, and that's just below him. Frederick was like 5 seconds below him. So right there, those guys.
But that was significant, right? Yeah. Because it tells you that Chris Knoblauch. I know the game was an overtime game, but Chris Knoblauch is playing. He's given everybody an opportunity. He's comfortable with his depth. He's not overly relying on his top lines. He's moving guys around. I think Chris Knoblauch is a terrific coach. And he was impressive last year, and he has such a real feel for the moment. I think he's got a good staff there. Paul Coffey. I'm always fascinated to watch Paul Coffey talking to the defenseman on the bench, and I wish I could actually hear what was going on down there. But Chris has done a good job, and he moves McDavid and Draisaitl together in the middle of the game, and he does that a lot. but he's willing to play those other guys more. And I think that's important because, against the Florida Panthers, usually they're the team that has the deeper bench. But so, as I look at it in this series so far and moving forward, maybe it's the other way around this year because the Oilers are getting contributions from a lot of different people in their lineup.
Yeah, I talked to Philip Broberg a lot this season about the impact that Paul Coffey had on him last year in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and just I think he gives these guys a lot of confidence to just play a little free, and I think that's what he did for a guy like Broberg, a young player last year. You mentioned Kapanen. This guy has gone to the net, EJ, more in the last 2 games than he did like 100+ games here in St. Louis. I mean, it's really amazing, like just how motivated of a player he looks to be right now. And listen, when you watch this guy practice, like you see the elite, world-class skating ability. I mean, this guy is an incredible skater. He can really shoot the puck as long as he hits the net. But, I think with some injuries, he's been given an opportunity to play with some good players. And, sometimes that's all it takes. I mean, how motivated do you have to be to give it, your full effort and 100% every night in the Stanley Cup Final?
Yeah. Well, it's funny with him because he's quoted as saying, and he goes, I thought might be my last chance in the NHL, right? Because he's bounced around a little bit now. And I know he was in the doghouse in Pittsburgh with Mike Sullivan. Obviously, they waived him in St. Louis, so things weren't going well there. But, this is when you look at both these rosters, they're littered with first-round picks.
I know.
Now, some of them are guys that McDavid, Draisaitl, Barkov, Ekblad. Some of them are guys that they picked, right? And then other guys like, a Sam Bennett, they plucked from Calgary. I mean, that was a great acquisition. Sam Bennett was a good player, was an okay player in Calgary, but he was traded. And then there's other guys like Podkolzin and Kapanen, and you go down. They were first round picks. They were thought of as really talented players. And, for whatever reason, things didn't work out in other spots, but they've come to these 2 teams. And, it's just a reminder, like it's when you have an opportunity to get players like that, sometimes, that there's something there. They were high picks. Maybe it doesn't work out in the end, but, the timing was right for Kapanen. I mean, he looks like a different guy. He looks like he's playing physical.
Yeah.
I mean, he's throwing his body around. And to your point, Andy, he's got those great skills. I mean, he burst through the middle. He almost won the game in overtime. He had a great rush to the net. I mean, so it's just the realization. Sometimes in life, Andy, we all need a wake-up call of sorts. He is a legacy player, right? Sammy played in the league for a long time. He was a first round, I think 22nd overall. Maybe there was an expectation in his mind that he was just going to be a player. And as time has gone along, he just hasn't been able to find his way. But maybe that realization that, the dream is coming to an end and nothing is given to anybody, maybe that realization in Edmonton and being around great players, maybe that's just been a wake-up call for him. But I'll tell you what, he's been a difference maker in the games he's played.
Yeah, he's been around the game his entire life, obviously, with his dad and whatnot, too. So, and Jake Wallman he's a world-class skater, too. And he was here in St. Louis. He was a draft pick of the Blues, and they were so high on him. I remember watching him his freshman year at Providence, and I talked to him about this because, they win the national championship, and he played against Jack Eichel that entire national championship game, and they shut down Eichel. Eichel was a freshman, obviously, as well, and won the Hobey Baker that year. But, I think that opened up the eyes for the Blues at the time of how well this guy can defend. He's not just a skater, but then for whatever reason, it just didn't work out for him here. Gets the payday in Detroit, and maybe it was a wake-up call for him when he got to San Jose, after what went down in Detroit. But now he looks like a guy that's going to play 10 more years. I mean, and he's got some legit ability. And you talk about confidence. This guy's playing with a lot of confidence right now, too.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been trying to figure out what the hell went on in Detroit for Jake Wallman. I know some people there. You might know more about it than I do. I mean, but and they wouldn't tell me. And it just doesn't make any sense that Steve Yzerman trades him with a second-round pick to San Jose. Like, here, take this really helpful player, and I'll give you a second-round pick. I mean, it just makes no sense. It's he goes to San Jose and then eventually goes on to Edmonton, where he's been a really good fit for them. And like I said, I mean, you've seen him up close. I've seen him at the media day and talked to him a couple of different times now during the final. And like he's a big, strong guy.
Yeah.
And like I said, he's not somebody that he's not Darian Hatcher. He's not looking to take your head off. But like when you go in the corner with him, he's hard to bump off the puck just because he's physically strong and he's big. And he can skate. And like he took a shot the other night. He came in and just ripped a one-timer, and Kevin Weeks and I were like up in the booth, and I said that was a rocket, and Kevin Weeks goes, "You not that one right, brother."
Yeah, no, he can shoot it, and he grew up playing with McDavid too. Everyone talks about Sam Bennett and McDavid on together. Wallman did as well. So he's been a good player for a long time. He had options to play with Canada or the U.S. in the World Juniors, years back in terms of which federation he wanted to choose. Growing up in Toronto, but. It's an interesting story when you dive into it. And yeah, there is a story there out of Detroit. I don't think Steve Yzerman is just giving him away and attaching a high pick.
Well, whatever happened, he's not, and Yzerman's not helping it, Andy, because he does a press conference, every year. Like it's been 2 years now. Come up with some story. Come up with something that can, instead he makes it worse by kind of making it into a story. I'm not going to talk about that. And, then later in the press conference, he's like, "Oh, I was daydreaming. I didn't hear the question." I mean, I don't know what's going on in that
press conference. And I said it.
It was bad. It was a bad look.
Terrible. And I didn't like it. And I know he was a great player.
And I know.
But we can't just evaluate these guys for being great players when they become executives. It's just a different ballgame. I didn't like the way he treated the media in that particular setting, especially when you're missing the playoffs every year. I didn't like it at all. So, but I would agree with you. I mean, when another team gives up a first-round pick to acquire the player and he's having the team win, and he gave a second-round pick, you may want to explain what went down, and I think it's a fair question for those who have asked. I got to ask you this, because I know you know Gretzky well, too, and, there's no doubt Gretzky's the greatest player ever. Some people maybe would say Gordie Howe or Bobby Orr or whatever your flavor is for who you want to say is the best player ever, Mario Lemieux, whatever. But listen, I have a hard time watching Connor McDavid. I'd never seen anything like this, ever. And I got to see Gretzky. I mean, I was young at the time, but, he was so much better than everybody else in his generation. You just look at his numbers. It's incredible. Nobody will. McDavid doesn't separate himself from the rest of the pack the way that Gretzky did in his primes.
No.
I can't say that McDavid's better than Gretzky, but, the competition that McDavid is facing is certainly different than the competition Gretzky faced every single night. I mean, this guy is the most talented thing I've ever seen on skates in my entire life, EJ.
Yeah, you know what, Andy, I'm with you on that. I mean, and I've been watching hockey, almost my whole life, and did the scouting work and look at guys, and I look at guys differently maybe than some other people do. And he's had to have the learning experiences, that all these guys have. When you think about it, right, Gretzky. They had a very wonderfully talented team in Edmonton right from the get-go there, but it took them a couple of years. They had that loss to L.A. It was crazy Miracle on Manchester year where they blew like a 5-goal lead in the third period. They had, the year where they got swept by the Islanders. They played the Islanders a couple of years earlier and lost in 6. So, there were all these different experiences they had. But finally, they understood, they learned the lessons you need to learn to win. And, Mario Lemieux comes to the Penguins. I mean, an amazing talent. Maybe no one, had the physical tools Mario Lemieux had. And he missed the playoffs for the first, 5 years of his career. Really, the breakout party for him was at the, one of those. It wasn't even a Canada Cup. It was that the series with the Russians. I think it was a 2 out of 3 series there, and in Hamilton he ends up scoring the big goal, playing with Gretzky, and then eventually the Penguins make the playoffs. They have the hard lessons they learn. They win 2 cups in a row. Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, these are guys that come into the league with all this hype, right? And they've all lived up to it. They've all lived up to it. But Connor McDavid, watching this guy, it's kind of amazing. He's an amazing skater. I've never seen anybody. He's got an extra gear that I don't think a lot of guys have. He's able with those short crossovers through the neutral zone. I mean, when you call a game, that the Oilers have the absolute worst uniforms for a broadcaster. There was orange on blue, or the worst. And for the viewer at home watching the games, I mean, it's just got to be brutal, because you're trying to figure out who's got the puck. I mean, if you're watching and you might not know, but Connor McDavid is so unique as a skater that there's never any doubt when he has the puck and when he's on the ice. And he's learned the lessons. And Andy, I'll go back to the second round, game 5 against Vegas, in Vegas, first period. There's a breakaway chance for Vegas. McDavid comes flying back, breaks up the play, crashes into the goalie, crashes into the net, goes into the end boards. I was worried for him. I said, I hope he's not hurt here. And he kind of slowly got up, went to the bench, but I was like, my eyes were wide open because I was like, now this man has learned what it takes in the playoffs to use that foot speed to defend. And when he is doing those things, everyone on the bench notices and everybody else knows, and they understand there is no negotiation on how we're going to play in these playoffs. And just been outstanding. And I completely agree with you. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody quite like Connor McDavid. He is an amazing, amazing player.
All right, listen, I got to ask you a question, and I'm going to let you go. A couple more. I want to ask you a couple of free agent questions.
All right.
Some of these big dogs, but and I'm going to ask you a question right now that I hate asking because I don't like it. But I have you on here, and I want to get who's on your Mount Rushmore of NHL.
Oh boy, it's a really hard one, right? Because now we've done
Ovi on there, or are you? Where are you?
That's a great question. Or because my first blush, the answer is no. But he's got 900 goals or whatever he's the leader, so maybe he needs to be on there. I mean, it's so tough. I mean, we're all, I think, with that question, we all, I'm older. I've seen more, my references are different than yours, right? So, there was I just talked to guys about, even to this day about Bobby Orr, and, people that play with him talk about Bobby Orr, not like he was a player, not like he was a teammate, but he was like some kind of mythical figure.
Yeah.
And he changed the game so dramatically. And when you think about the point totals, I know it's a different era, but nobody, to your point earlier about Gretzky, nobody else was doing it on defense like Bobby Orr. So I think he has to be there. I think Gretzky has to be there. And then, then you start to get into that after that is Ovi there? Is Sidney Crosby there? Is, Gordie Howe? You would think for most of my life, Gordie Howe was there.
Mario?
Chiseled. Mario, like I just said before, Mario there's no one ever, Yager and Lemieux were the two most physically gifted guys because of their size, right? They're just so big and so strong and yet so, have such skill. And Mario even more so, just because, I think about that goal he scored against Minnesota. They made a statue of it outside the building there. Going through two defensemen in a Stanley Cup Final and making it look easy, coming back from years of being on the sideline. Andy, you were probably very young when that happened, or a younger person. And he hadn't played for 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden he's working out. And then it was a very secretive thing. And then he comes back in the lineup on his first shift. He gets an assist and comes back in like no time has passed. So he's such a unique player. It's so sad that he dealt with injuries and he had the cancer challenges because, in this era where, there isn't as much hooking and holding and cross-checking, Mario Lemieux, I don't know I can't even say how many points he might score. So, it's hard, for me to go down that path. All those guys could be on. I would say this for sure. I'd have to have, for me, at my age, seeing what I've seen, I think I'd have to have Orr on, and I'd have to have Gretzky on, and I'd probably have to have Lemieux on. And I might still have Gordie on just because I'm older and, Gordie Howe was a special, special person in hockey. So, but listen, they're going to have to build bigger mountains because we got a lot of great players. Sidney Crosby is a fantastic player. He's going to end up, I think, top 5 points per game in history. And he's still going. So, so many great players, Danny. It's a tough question.
Yeah, he's got the hardware to go with it. And, the greatest goal scorer in the history of the game, you would think that he would be on there. I know. Who knows what McDavid's final resume is going to look like, especially if he can win this year. How many cups he's going to end up with, how many points he's going to end up with when it's all said and done. So, okay, last thing for Mitch Marner, Sam Bennett.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on Marner? if you're a general manager? Are you salivating to get him and pay him $13-14 million? Are you pumping the brakes? How do you feel on Mitch?
He's a piece of the puzzle, but he's not the driver, right? So in the old days, before the salary cap, the Detroit Red Wings or the Colorado Avalanche, or the Dallas Stars or the New Jersey Devils, those were those four teams in the mid 90s through the early 2000s before we got into the cap that would have big payrolls, or maybe the New York Rangers. They had a big payroll. They just never won. After they won in 94, they missed the playoffs, I think, 7 straight times from 97 to 04. But like that would have been an easy thing because he's just a complimentary piece and he's just paying a lot of money and there's no salary cap and big market teams could do that. Now it's a little bit of a different calculation. I feel like watching Mitch and, in that group in Toronto during the playoffs this year, and Craig Berube very, very well from being in St. Louis. And I thought Craig did a really good job with them trying to get them to play the way that you have to play. I just said before about McDavid, right? Rushing back into the D zone, diving to break up a play, crashing into the net, like using your abilities to defend.
Passion.
And to be smart defensively.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? So I will say this about those Leafs. Those guys, and Marner, Nylander, Matthews, I think those guys were not helped by the coddling that has gone on there. And those guys, I don't remember. I mean, Jackie Redmond did the NHL Now show with me for several years. She's a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan. This year I did more media work in Toronto, so I followed it more. I don't remember those guys getting benched ever for defensive, for bad defensive play. And so I'm watching the playoffs this year against Florida. They've got them in trouble, down 2-0 in game 3. They're up 2 goals. And Mitch Marner makes a couple of just bad defensive choices in the game and lead to goals for the Florida Panthers. And, we know the rest of the story. And Nylander did something similar in one of the other games. He refused to dump the puck in game 4, and it led to a turnover in the neutral zone and a goal the other way, and it pretty much ended the game. But, those guys were never had the tough love early in their careers. I think we're far down the road now with these guys. Is it my first instinct when Marner makes a bad defensive play in a big spot is well, you got to sit him for that. You got to send a message. But it's too late now. I mean, that should have happened when he was 21. And I know it's a different era and these guys make a lot of money and you got to be they're a little more sensitive. But at the end of the day, they have to learn those lessons. Think about Connor McDavid. Think about all the coaches that he has had. Dave Tippett, Ken Hitchcock, Todd McClellan, Jay Woodcroft, Ralph Kruger, Dallas Eakins. I'm missing guys, right? In Toronto, it was Sheldon Keefe for the most part of that run. At the end of the day,
right?
What's that?
They had Babcock for a little.
That's right. They had listen, Mike Babcock, listen, we all know the stories, and Mike did some things that were, off the chart, and, he's not coaching anymore. But, I would tell you, they might have been better off in Toronto keeping Mike there for another 2 years.
I think you're right.
I mean, just because Mike's methods are not always great. But at the end of the day, those guys needed to learn a few hard lessons early on because the losing apparently wasn't enough pain. And to be fair, they play in a very tough division. The series they've lost, for the most part, they've lost a lot of times to better teams. But last year against the Bruins, they could have found a way to win that series. Now, they had some injury issues. Matthews was out. Nylander was out. They didn't find a way to win. A couple of years ago when we were in the pods, I mean, that loss to Montreal. I know they lost to Tavares early in that series, but they were up 3-1. They were the better team. Didn't find a way to win. So when you ask me about Marner now, as we fast forward, he's going to be a free agent. It looks like he's going to, test the market and maybe go elsewhere. I know there's teams. I know like the Utah Hockey Club is talking about paying him $100 million, right? So that's 7 times whatever to get you over $100 million. I mean, there are going to be teams that are going to make big offers for this guy because 100-point score, and there's 16 teams that missed the playoffs this year, right? They want to just get in. And so there'll be interest. I mean, I'll be very curious to see what he does because he could just take the money and go somewhere where the team has some promise, but, is a ways off. Or he could pick a place where maybe the team like he's a piece that could help them. Like I think of the LA Kings, for example. They have centers. Kopitar's getting along on the tooth, but he's still a good player. Byfield is getting better. They have Phil Deneau there. You fit in a piece like Mitch Marner there. Maybe that's a piece that really helps them maybe get past Edmonton in a series. Who knows? So he's a very talented guy. He can do a lot of different things. I do think there are elements to this game. There are no perfect players. I mean, there are very few, that do everything right all the time. I do feel though with Mitch and with less so from William Nylander, because William Nylander, he marches to his own drummer. He's a hell of a player.
Yeah.
But there's some defensive issues there with Marner, but like he could go somewhere else, Andy, and be really good. And then the Toronto Maple Leafs will be, sitting there going, why didn't we keep him? So we'll see how it plays out. But I do think, again, going back to those guys, I think they were not well served by being coddled so much early in their career.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Good point. EJ, I appreciate it. Great having you on. Hopefully we can do it again. NHL Network International, NHL Radio International. You're doing the call with Kevin Weeks, so keep up the great work there. We'll see you on NHL Network. I won't see you at the draft this year. We're not going. Everything's going to be here. So
I know.
Working from St. Louis this year, but we'll see you around for sure. Have a great summer after the final and everything else. So thanks for doing this.
Andy, listen, I'm happy to join you anytime. Congratulations. I followed your career when I was going through St. Louis in like the 2000s and watching you kind of move through things, and you've done really well. Congratulations on your family and everything that's going well for you. And I'm happy to jump in with you anytime because you know your stuff.
I appreciate it, EJ. Thank you so much.
All right.
We'll talk soon. Enjoy the series. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Back on Hockey Sense. Are you in the penalty box, Jammer?
Yes. I spent some time here. I don't know what 1,200 minutes equals out to, but I believe it's a couple days. I'm not sure. It's a lot of time. So I'm back in a familiar spot.
Give me your best penalty box story. Anybody ever throw popcorn on you, flip you off, bang on the glass at you? Did you ever go back at anybody else? Any fans that you had to clap back at?
Yeah, absolutely. All I really always said was, thanks for buying your ticket. That's an expensive seat, and you're growing HRR, so thank you.
Who had the hardest fans? Who are the hardest fans on you that just got under your skin?
Detroit, probably. Nashville, probably division rivals, the teams you face the most, the teams, Chicago, obviously, and teams you face a lot in the playoffs that you're going to hear it from them. Dallas was relentless too.
How hard is it when you're in the box and you feel like it's a terrible call or the emotions are so high or you're so angry, Jamal, and you got to find a way to keep it together and just not lose your mind on the referee, slam your stick, break your stick in half. You got a penalty box tenant who's in there. He's probably writing some stuff down. He's next to you. Because you were so emotional at times, Jamal, very intense. How hard was it to keep it together?
Very difficult. I think that as you get older, it becomes easier and more mature. But I think it's a challenge. Like, Andy, I always try to harness that energy, and that's what made me an effective player. So it was a really tight line to be on to make sure you're not being irresponsible or hurting your team. But that's what it comes down to. You don't want to hurt your team. And anytime you're in here, unless it's after a fight, you're not feeling great. You're feeling like you let your team down. So you definitely have some reflection, if you will, when you're in here.
How do you think Nosek's feeling right now from the Florida Panthers? He gets a delay game penalty in overtime. What do you think of that call?
I think it's the right call. I think that sometimes we overreact when we see the call go away where you're like, oh, he didn't intend to do that. You're right. He didn't intend to do it. But how do you draw the line between intention and non-intention? You can't put the referees in that situation. So it has to be black and white. It's certainly unfortunate that it happened that way. I think there's a positive. The refs didn't call a penalty that was questionable. It was unquestionable. He hoisted it into the stands. It's unfortunate. It's not the reason why they lost. Bobrovsky wasn't himself. A couple of those goals he would want to have back. Skinner outplayed him, and we'll see if that trend continues.
Yeah, the Arvidsson goal for sure he'd love to have back. some people suggest that delay a game penalty should not be included as part of the game in an overtime in the Stanley Cup playoffs. What do you think of that?
No, because why wouldn't you, under pressure, you've been in your own zone for, I guess people are underestimating how skilled the D are. No offense to Craig Ludwig and the defenseman back in the late 90s, but they did it out of necessity. These defense are all unbelievably skilled. They can do it on purpose anytime they want. So if they're under duress or been in the zone for almost 2 minutes, what do you think they're going to do? I think that'd be a horrible road to go down, and it's unfortunate. But let's not overreact to something that happened, unfortunately.
Were you in the league? You had to have been in the league when they changed the rule and they implemented that call. What was your first reaction to it? Were you thinking originally or initially like, this is crazy, this is a dumb rule, and then all of a sudden you see it, how it's part of the game, and you maybe change your mind a little bit?
I like the rule because I was the one putting defensemen under duress, and if they were under duress, they were going to mistakenly do that. And so now, if I put them under duress or they got nervous, could be the result is we get a power play out of it. Where it ended up biting us was, I don't know if you remember back to when I was in a conference final, San Jose versus Vancouver. We were in a tremendous position, and unfortunately, we're down shorthanded late in the game. I think it was game 4 at home, and Douglas Murray hoisted it, gave them a 5-on-3, and that was the turning point in the series. In Boston, Vancouver ends up going to the Stanley Cup Final and loses to Boston. I believe that team for San Jose was good enough to win the cup.
Douglas Murray. We had a great conversation with Dan Boyle about Douglas Murray, man. He was always such a beast. I couldn't figure him out, but I loved watching him play. He just played so crazy and reckless. And then you find out he's Swedish. It just never made any sense to me that this guy was Swedish, but I love watching him play. How strong was he?
Oh my God. One of the great characters of the game. I absolutely hate him as an opposing player, but one of my favorite teammates I've ever played with. Will do anything for you. Love to have a good time. He'd after a game on Saturday night, he'd get a limo and go to San Francisco. He was single at the time, and he'd be like, Jeremy, do you want to come? I'm like, no, I have a family with 2. I can't go to San Francisco for the night. Like, the guy liked to have a good time. And when I played against him, I thought that he enjoyed the sweets a little too much. His face is a little round, so I might have given him a little bit of trouble. And then come to find out, he's absolutely ripped and just solid muscle, Viking, great teammate, one of the hardest guys I've ever hit. Reverse shoulder. He hits probably harder than anybody I've ever played against.
Yeah. I love Douglas Murray, man. Love watching him play back.
And very smart.
Yeah.
Like, really smart guy.
In terms of hockey or off the ice?
Just in life. Like, just in finance and business and culture. Like, very, very, very smart guy who when you get to talk to him, you start to realize, okay, there's a lot of depth here to this guy.
What did Edmonton do to Florida the other day? I'd never seen Florida ice the puck as much as they did. They just completely got away from their game. Edmonton, outshoots Florida 14-2 in the third period, and it just seemed like Florida could never really get going. And the physicality surprised me a little bit. That's typically Florida's game, but you got Evander Kane running around. He had 9 hits in the game, I think. Trent Frederick had a couple of big hits. Edmonton looked like the more physical team.
That's exactly it. You hit it on the nose. You got to bully the bully. And so Florida has been the bully for the last several years. And I know that people don't like that word, but in the context of hockey, that's what they've done. They've gone out at people. They punched them in figuratively and literally in the mouth with typically no response. And the decision by Edmonton was to change the dynamic of their group, not just having Evander. Now Evander's got other guys. Trent Frederick would be the number 1 co-pilot in setting the tone. And if you want to answer the bell, those are 2 really tough guys that can skate, can get on the forecheck. And that's why you never saw a response. They're going to have to step up to one of those 2. And I'm not saying Florida won't do it, but they didn't do it in game 1. And I would double down if I was Edmonton, staying on that line, driving through those D, paying a price every time Bouchard gets that puck. Evander or Trent got to go right through him and finish in a check. I love that about Trent Frederick. I'm watching the game, and too many times in today's games, these guys let these guys off the hook. If you're within a stick length, a stick and a half, 1/1000, you finish your check. It'll add up by the end of the series.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And he only gets so many opportunities. I think he had the least amount of ice time of any player for Edmonton, but still played over 13 and a half minutes, even though the game went into overtime. I mean, you just look at the ice time for Edmonton in terms of how they play their forwards. We all know who's taking up the bulk of the ice for the Oilers. Bigger game for Edmonton to win as opposed to Florida. You think Florida can recover a little easier than maybe Edmonton would have if the Oilers would have lost game one?
Very fair. Absolutely. Think about it. All forwarders telling themselves as guys, we came here for a split. Let's be honest. We know that Edmonton's better than they were last year. We expect and anticipate this to be a 6 or 7 game series, as both teams do. It would be a positive and a net win for Florida to go home tied 1-1, gaining home ice advantage. So the pressure still remains on Edmonton to hold serve at home. And I think that, as you said it, let's not forget, Edmonton went down 0-3 last year. If they lose this game, they have to win game 2. So there's no doubt in my mind the pressure was squarely on Edmonton's shoulders to win game 1. They did. They held serve. Now they got to do it again. And the challenge is, I did not like Edmonton in the first 3 or 4 minutes, even 5 minutes of overtime. They were on their heels. They were sitting back. Florida was on their toes, coming at them. I didn't like that. And they kind of got lucky. So
Yeah.
I would be mindful of that as they review the game.
Yeah, and then they just kind of settled down a little bit. Can you walk and listen, I know you were a PK guy, but walk me through the execution level. I mean, at the highest level, Jamal, of the game-winning goal in terms of how Edmonton moved the puck with a purpose. Everyone knows where they're going. The timing was immaculate, just incredible on that game-winning goal in overtime.
Well, I liked when guys are aggressive on a PK, but I don't like when the D chase outside the dots. I don't like when the D leaves in that front and forces the forward to be down there. There's really no reason to go there. For me, it's protect the seams, manage your depth as a forward, meaning don't get too close to the blue line so you allow seam plays behind you. Let them get the shots from the flanks and protect the net front and pressure when you can. I think that they wanted to be aggressive. I think the smartest play made on the ice in that entire play was Corey Perry's play.
Oh, backhand, yeah.
That play right there is what broke everything. And I think that then it created a 2-on-1 at the net and boom, game over, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't chase Perry, that play's never made and the game's still going on. So, yeah, it's hard to show you without diagramming things, but I think that in general, pressuring when they have complete control, even though Perry had his back to him, he was baiting him. It's almost like when Kitch used to tell me, hey, you got to go to Yzerman, you got to go to Modano there. I'm like, yeah, his back's to me on purpose. He wants me to come there. I don't think you understand. He's one of the best players in the world. He's going to slip it through me. So I know he wants me to go there. I'm not going to – he's baiting me.
Yeah.
It's not like he's in trouble. So I think that there was a little bit of that from Corey Perry in regard to baiting the defender outside the dots.
Yeah, it's a little harder play to make if you're not as aggressive. I saw some breakdowns on social media the next day. I mean, a lot of the heat is on Brad Marchand for not covering or not getting to Draisaitl in front. I mean, that's a lot of ice to cover for him, isn't it? The puck was just up top just moments before that.
Well, I get it. It depends what type of power penalty kill they're doing. But yeah, the rotation is that, you're in a diamond and he would have to rotate and be in that front. Those things happen so quickly. So I think I'm not surprised that ended up happening. And, that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah. All right. I know you got to go. You got a camp going on. Listen, a big dinner this weekend, I would imagine. You're in town. Where's the mayor's family eating this weekend? And I see that new car you're driving, man, and the wheels just look shiny, man. I see those wheels from a distance, Jamal. Where'd you get those? All right. Good stuff, Jamal. See you at the rink later on today. Appreciate it. Yep. All right. Hope you enjoyed this edition of Hockey Sense. Great conversation there with EJ Hradek. Of course, Jamal Mayers as well. Great content. Of course, First Community brings us Hockey Sense each and every week. Sign your son or daughter up for Little Blues and do it today. Check out firstcommunity.com. It's the best way to get your son or daughter introduced to the game of hockey. Sign them up. You get, I think, 6 ice times, great instruction, very low cost, and all the equipment comes with it, including the skates, helmet, skates, stick, everything. So you don't have to go to the hockey shop and be overwhelmed, not sure what to get your son or daughter, and everything just comes in a box and it's there for you. And then you can decide if you want to invest in the game of hockey and sign your son or daughter up to go play with one of the great clubs here in St. Louis. It'd be amazing to get your son or daughter playing hockey and create all those memories. Little Blues would not be possible without First Community, just like the St. Louis Blues Hall of Fame. First Community has their hand in so many different hockey things here in our community, and we certainly appreciate that. Of course, Dirt Cheap Fun, your one-stop party shop. Download the app today. David Novak with Blue Note Roofing. Did you suffer storm damage? Give him a call today, 314-920-5713. Of course, Lordo's Diamonds. Get that special someone, something special in your life. All right, we'll do it again next Friday. Hope everybody enjoyed the show today. Have a great weekend. For everybody here at Half Coast Studios, I'm Andy Strickland, reminding you to keep your head up and your stick on the ice. We'll do it again next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.